So you've got my full manuscript. You've read it. You're totally in love. You say, "Oh my God, this is indeed the greatest book ever written." What happens next? Do you start stalking me or the writer online to see what information you can find out? Do you arrange a phone call? What's your next move?
Honestly, usually I set up a phone call first. So what I do is I do send an email where I give a little bit of information about me and the agency and how much I loved this project and would love to work with you on it. And then I say, hey, let's set up a time to call. I don't know. For whatever reason, I don't like doing the just calling before the author knows I'm going to be calling. I want to make sure, I'm not catching them at a weird time or anything. So I always like to send a little email first before doing the call. And then, yeah, usually before the call, I might, if I'm not already following them on Twitter, I might do that, kind of look through and see what they've been talking about. If they have an author website, I'll typically look at that, or a blog. So I do a little bit of social media stalking before the call, usually.
So if you're looking at a blog or a website, what's going to turn your eye and what's going to repel you? Or catch your eye. Turn your head, catch your eye.
Yeah, it's just like when I'm looking at, an author website, I like to read the little bio and just learn a little bit more about the author and if they're talking about other books they've worked on, if they're already published, what those books are. Those are always things that draw my attention, just because I want to get to know more about the person because I'm excited about their writing, so I want to get to know them a little bit better too. And I guess things that would repel me is if, for instance, I went to an author's blog or an author's Twitter account and they're bad-mouthing agents or publishing professionals or, there's something like that. That would be a major red flag. But I can't really think of anything else I've really seen that's totally repelled me from talking to someone. It would have to be something pretty major like that. And surprisingly, you'll see some authors who do that. So it's like you're trying to get an agent, but you're bad-mouthing publishing on Twitter.
What do you define bad-mouthing? Like just, I'm so sick of the query process. Why aren't agents
No,
ready?
not like that. Like actual. No, I mean, that's totally okay to be like, oh, querying is hard. I wish this was easier. Why is this like that? That's fine to talk about that stuff. But I mean, like saying so-and-so is like so slow. They're like, they rejected my manuscript. How dare they? This is a New York Times bestseller. Kind of things like that.
So anytime they're calling out somebody just specifically by name, that's a big no-no.
Yeah, if they're saying negative things, like if they're adding someone on Twitter and they're talking to them in a nice manner, that's totally fine. But also all agents talk, so when there's things like that going on, the rest of us generally find out. So there was something recently on Twitter, without going too much into specifics, where this author was bad-mouthing a specific agent and saying they don't have any sales and they're not a good agent and stuff like that, yet they're looking for an agent. So I don't quite understand why someone would do that in any circumstance. But
not using your public name. Come on, authors. That's what anonymous boards are for.
Yeah, go complain on the anonymous boards. Luckily, that comes out super rarely, so it's not something I'm seeing all the time. It's definitely not a big thing.
What if I'm or the author is not bad-mouthing any agents, saying only great things about other authors, but they have extreme political views one way or the other? Is that a turnoff?
That's a tricky one, because obviously I respect, any freedom of speech and all those good things and being able to voice your opinion. But, I'm working in children's books. So if anyone is saying, anything racist or, hurtful or, attacking others about their political views, I wouldn't want to work with someone like that. So there's a fine line between expressing how you feel about politics and then, kind of pushing those views on others and putting down others' points of views.
Gotcha. So, okay, you do the online search, and if you're looking at their social media presence, and you've got to then at some point pitch the book to an editor and try and convince them that this is an author that's going to go the extra mile. They're really going to promote this book. Is there are you looking for a certain number of followers on their Twitter handle, or?
Nope. Never, honestly. And, there's some authors I take on who don't have a Twitter yet. And also, it depends a little bit on the age range you're working with, too. For instance, like with picture books, it's not nearly as big of a thing to be on social media as it is if you're more of a YA writer. But also, I would say, do what you're comfortable with social media wise. So, for instance, some people might really prefer Instagram. Some people might really prefer Twitter. Some people might not be on either and might, just have a blog. So I'd say whichever, social media medium you prefer, just make sure you're posting regularly on that one versus trying to kind of half do several different ones. But as far as followers, that's really, especially for a debut, that's not really a big thing to me. Because, once, that book is, going to be published, and that's really when you'll start getting followers, people who start to discover you and things like that. So it definitely would never cause me to say no if someone didn't have a social media presence, or if they did, they didn't have a lot of followers. That's not so big for me.
Gotcha. So it would just be also nice, but not the primary thing?
Yeah, and I also, with authors that I do take on and represent, I often will help them with those things too. If they're looking to like get more active in, on Twitter, and how can they do that, and what kinds of things, might be helpful to post and get involved with, I can definitely guide if they want me to do that.
And if somebody had an extremely popular middle grade themed podcast that had recently boosted literary agent Christa Heschke, would that be a difference maker, you think?
I mean, that would be cool.
It's not a real question. But here's one that is. Okay, so you check out the social media, no red flags. You've got a pretty good sense that this is somebody you want to work with. Then that phone call.
Yeah.
Do you ever has it ever been the case that somebody has said something stupid during an initial phone call that killed the whole deal?
No, never. Honestly, I realized that being put on the spot a little bit, and having that call with an agent can be nerve-wracking, and so sometimes there's a little bit of nerves there, and sometimes I get like a little bit of nerves doing those calls too, because I want to make sure that I say the right thing and impress the person I'm talking to. So no, I mean, honestly, sometimes you'll stumble over words a little bit or forget your question or whatever, but that's just part of being on a call like that. That's totally cool. I've never had a call that's just went so downhill that I was like, oh, never mind, I don't want to work with you. That's never happened.
I was afraid to say all the things I hate about literary agents on social media, but now that I'm talking to you.
Well, that probably would do it.
What's the purpose of that call? What are you hoping to get out of it and hoping to provide?
Yeah, I mean, part of it is definitely to get to know that person, because as an agent, I'm definitely looking to be a career agent with each of my authors, meaning I want to work with them from book to book and beyond. So I'm not just focusing on this one book, like, hey, I'm going to work with you on this book and then see how it goes. That's definitely not me as an agent. So I think it's important that when I have that call, that both of us feel comfortable with each other, the conversation's flowing well, like that person can ask me questions, they're not afraid to ask me questions. And then I get a sense of, hey, where do you see your career going? Like, for instance, I'm offering you rep on this YA fantasy. Is that where you see yourself continuing to write? Or do you also write middle grade? Do you also write picture books? Do you also write adult? So kind of learning all those things about the author, getting a sense of what's important to them, and as in an agent too, are they looking for someone who's really editorial? Are they looking for someone who has a lot of New York Times best-selling clients? Like whatever it is, and then making sure that I can provide them with those things, or so it works both ways too, because it's like matchmaking, I guess. So the agent has to have all the qualities they're looking for that are important to them, and then also I have to make sure that they seem like, they'd be good to work with. They're excited about their writing career and building that. So yeah, it's kind of a time to get to know those things about someone.
If I come back and I say, I envision my career being just this book, or conversely, I want to write a book in every genre before I die, My next is going to be an erotic Western. That's my follow-up to my middle grade novel. Either of those things an issue?
Well, if it's an area like that I don't represent at all, then I would be like, well, I don't know if I'd be the right agent for you then, because I do not work on adult Western erotica. But sometimes, though, I've actually worked with clients before where they do middle grade and they do, for instance, like adult nonfiction, which I don't do at all. And they have an agent for adult nonfiction, and I handle their kids. So there have been situations where that has happened and where it's worked. But I would say that, if they're maybe trying to go too much all over the board, that might be a red flag, just because I think it's great when you write for different genres and in different age groups. A lot of my clients do that. They kind of dabble. But I think especially as a debut, it's important to kind of, build your author brand a little bit. And so maybe your first 2 books are YA contemporary, and, then you have a picture book here and there thrown in. And then maybe you go into like a different genre in YA after you kind of built that platform a little bit. So yeah, those are things I would definitely think about during the call.